This episode of the Mega Meeple is brought to you by our supporters over at Pod Pledge. Alright, welcome back to the Mega Meeple, the show all about gamers and the games that bring them together. This is episode 49, and quite excited week this past week, and also going into next weekend, which will be our 50th episode, 1 year anniversary, and also International Tabletop Day is that weekend. So there's going to be a lot of gamage, a lot of celebration, and we hope you will be part of that. If you haven't already and want to get your 15 seconds of fame, you could submit your audio clip to us. Just email it to us at megameeple@outlook.com, and we will play your audio clip at the beginning of next episode. And we have about a dozen or so that we're going to be playing at the very beginning of the episode. And then going into our second year as a podcast, you will find that we're going to renew some things and change some things up. It's a new year, new intro, new outro, and new things that's coming up. And I'll touch upon those things later on in the episode. But the big news this past week here at the Mega Meeple Studios is that we got our gaming table. Yay! And so this was part of a Kickstarter last year from the Ultimate Gaming Table. And of course, we'll put a link to those things. They have a website that you're able to pre-order the tables and any accessories and so forth. But yes, the backers are finally getting their tables. It's been a few months late, but you know that's typical for Kickstarter stuff with all the logistics that need to fall in line. A lot of ducks need to get into the row for things to happen, and it was exciting to know that at least my table was part of the first shipment that arrived here in America. So it is sitting propped right now. It's sitting propped up against the wall in our hallway. So I'm just waiting for a few young whippersnappers to come over here and put it together for me, because I am of the age that I do not do anything. I'm retired. There's a reason why I'm retired, and it's just a lot easier and better chance of getting done right if we just get some younger bodies in here to do all the manual labor for me, and I just stand there and point. Okay, I want that there. I want this there, and I want this done. I'm like the foreman of this place. So, but it's now as a result of once we get the gaming table assembled. That's and I've said this before. That really was the last component needed to make the Mega Meeple Studio complete, and as a result, I've been kind of. I have a bunch of raw footage, video footage that I've been wanting to do, that I have recorded. I've been wanting to edit and put on the YouTube channel. So if you've seen any of the videos that we've had thus far, I have a Starfield map, space map that I put on the table just to cover up all the because we have an old table that was donated to us, and from all the years of beating it up, it has a bunch of burn marks on it and scratches and dings and dents, and yeah, it's functional. But if we're gonna put out a nice looking visual product on the Mega Meeple YouTube channel, I really wanted to put off doing a lot more videos until we got the gaming table. So now that we got the table, I don't have any more excuses to just kind of hold off putting videos out. So you will once we get the table put together, which hopefully will be in the next week. So if you have not already, go over there to subscribe and hit that little bell thing so you'll be notified when we do start putting videos up there. And the link to that, as well as all of our other social media crap, is on the social media page on the website. That's www.themegameeple.com. Just go to the social media page and all the links are there. And speaking of videos, I have been educating myself on YouTube, speak of the devil, on the Adobe Premiere Pro video editor. I've been doing, when I have done videos, it's been primarily on Final Cut Pro, and I think that's another reason why I haven't really put out a whole bunch of videos on a consistent and regular, frequent basis, is that there's always at least one thing about your job or what you do that you don't like. And for me, it's editing videos. And I think that the whole graphic interface of Final Cut Pro and just the way the menus and stuff are laid out and just made editing video for me personally just more of an aggravation than it needs to be. So I've been looking into Adobe Premiere Pro, and I'm finding that along with its integration with Audition, to be just a lot easier for me to work with. Look at it. I've been educating myself on how to do things on that. Been playing around with it, and yeah, I think editing videos will be a lot more fun for me by using Adobe. So I think that's the route I'm going to take once we get the gaming table up and film some more raw footage videos and start getting some new stuff out there. And again, it's always good for a second year re-examine what you've been doing and what tools you've been using, and I mean, we spent this past year as ever evolving, improving, changing thing, and the fact that we are now crossing the cusp of our 50th episode, 1 year anniversary. It's one of those things where we just want to turn it up a few notches. So looking forward to doing that. We've also launched our second year project page on Pod Pledge. So if you want to help make the second year as successful as the first, you go over to our Pod Pledge page project, and that's a lot of P's in there, and share that and donate to that. You could do that on either a per episode or per month basis. And that basically just helps us with the hosting costs and with the Libsyn and the website and all of that kind of stuff. But even so, if you're not able to, support the show financially, just by listening and spreading the word is enough of support for the show. I mean, heck, word of mouth goes a long, long way. So if you're able to turn your other people in your gaming circle onto the show and refer them to us and see if our style and content is their cup of tea, then at least it gets the Mega Meeple name out there. So we appreciate that very much as well. So there's a lot of, I haven't done news in a while, but I wanted to take time to do that this episode because there's been some pretty exciting things going on in the realm of board games. First of all, it is official that Fury of Dracula is getting another edition. It'll be edition 4. I know when the breakup, in a sense, happened, and it got to the point where, it was thought that Fury of Dracula was now out of print and you're never going to be able to get it again. that's when the scalpers and the eBay people just started charging an arm and a leg and your firstborn in order to get a copy. And oddly enough, when stuff like that happens, this is going to sound weird, but when out of print games start to, the price starts shooting up, go check out your local bookstore. In the midst of all that firestorm, I found my copy of Fury of Dracula 3rd edition at the local Barnes and Noble. And it was a regular price. It wasn't jacked up to like $200. It was a regular price board game. So I was like, great. Nabbed that, secured my spot on my shelf, so I didn't have to worry about it. But it's cool that Fury of Dracula 4th edition is coming out, and this time it's coming out with some pre-painted minis. So that's going to be really exciting to see. So looking forward to that. Also, our obligatory mention of Mansions of Madness. Mansions of Madness 2nd edition is coming to Steam. So for those of you who are not able to get the actual physical copy on your table enough times, you now have an opportunity to play a version of that on Steam. Of course, this is coming out from Asmodee Digital. And this version of the game is called Mother's Embrace. So if you don't have a Steam account yet, you might want to create one, because this is going to be pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, another really exciting news events that was announced. X-Wing, you can move over, because Battlestar Galactica Starship Battles is coming to the table, and it's put out by Ares Games, so we're looking forward to that. It looks like it's going to be using the same style of like Wings of Glory and Sails of Glory game system. But yeah, so for those of you who have not been able to get too much on X-Wing, maybe get into Battlestar Galactica, because I really liked. I remember watching the campy show back when I was a kid, and then the reboot wasn't too shabby. It was pretty good. I really enjoyed that one. So now we could take the Vipers and the Cylons to the table and have them battle it out. Now I'm just curious on, as far as the pilots, are they going to have the Dirk Benedict Starbuck, or are they going to have the Kate Sackhoff female Starbuck as a pilot? So that'll be kind of cool to find out which version they go with her. Or they just do what they put up both, because they do say it's going to be based on the TV series, both the classic and the, I guess you call the reboot version as well, or reimagined version that was on the Sci-Fi Channel there not too long ago. All right, now we have a shout out. Yeah. It's been a while since I've checked iTunes, so I'm sorry for the delay on this, but this was posted on April 6th, and we have a 5-star review on our iTunes, and this is by Rated P. And they give us, they say, fantastic board game podcast, 5 stars. And then they say, I've really been enjoying the Mega Meeple. There's a whole slew of board game podcasts, and this is one of the better ones. Well, thank you so much, Rated P. Appreciate the kind words and the 5-star loving. I listen to a bunch of other podcasts, not all of them gaming, but I noticed the last month, actually, a lot of people were doing like their March Madness picks, or like their fantasy basketball March Madness picks. And I thought to myself, I know this has been done with board games, with some podcasters, but I want to take a sort of like a different approach to it. And what I'm thinking of doing is doing a sort of like a board game battle royal, sort of like with the WWE does, and they'll do like a battle royal, and the where 30 superstars will go into the ring, and they just start wailing on each other, and if you're thrown over the top rope and both feet touch the floor, you're eliminated. So they just keep going and going, wailing on each other, and until only one man survives, and then that superstar can go on to WrestleMania to have a shot at the championship, or the WWE championship. So I think of doing that with board games, where we would just pit a bunch of board games against each other. It'll be theme to theme, and we'll have like the superstars, and then the mid carders, and then we'll have some jobbers in there. If you follow wrestling or WWE, you understand the terminology. So I think it's kind of we could have a humorous take on this with board games. But then whichever board game wins the board game battle royal will then go on to Meeple Mania and face Gloomhaven, or whatever or Pandemic, or whatever the big powerhouse champion is. And I kind of talk about Gloomhaven being the Brock Lesnar of board games. It's a game that's only readily available every like 3 or 4 months when they do a reprint. And then after that, it's really hard to get a hold of. So yeah, it's kind of like the Brock Lesnar of board games. He'll come to a big pay-per-view event or something like that, and whoever has been built up to face him for the championship, he'll come in, beat him up, or in the case of WrestleMania, bloody them up. No, Roman Reigns got cut open pretty good. I wonder how bad they had to twist Vince McMahon's arm to allow that, because nowadays it's like I think wrestlers get fined if they bleed. I remember back in the day, especially with a cage match, it was almost a foregone conclusion that somebody was going to get busted open. Hell, I remember matches with the Nature Boy Ric Flair. His white hair was crimson red by the time halfway through the match, and that was like just an expected thing. And now it's like, this no, we got to be family friendly, and so if any wrestler even bleeds, that's got to be something that's been pre-planned and agreed upon, that on both superstar's part and also Vince McMahon, because Vince doesn't like blood anymore. If a wrestler bleeds, there's a penalty for that. Gloomhaven is the Brock Lesnar of board games. He'll come out every once in a while, every 3 or 4 months, beat the hell out of somebody, and then go off, sit around at his ranch, and you won't see him again for another 3 or 4 months. So yeah, so it kind of fits. So anyway, I'm taking suggestions on what game you would like to see in the board game battle royal. So just let us reach out to us either on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Again, all those links are on the social media page on the website, and let us know who would you want to see the board game battle royal. Now, you could even recommend or suggest an old favorite, because that's another draw with the battle royals, is they usually get some old timer that retired 20, 30 years ago and bring them in, sort of like a nostalgic thing. And of course they protect him, and they usually don't. They usually get eliminated really easily or very, very quickly. So yeah, if you have an old favorite from years gone by that you like to see make an appearance, let us know of that as well. This episode's guest is Artem Safarov, and he's talking about his successful solo game on Kickstarter right now at the time of this episode, Unbroken. Now, at the time we're releasing this episode, you still have about 3 or 4 days to get over a Kickstarter. I mean, it's already funded, so, it's good to see the light of day. And so if you miss it, I'm sure there'll be a chance for you to late pledge or pre-order it. But let's go to that interview right now. All right, welcome back to the Mega Meeple, and we have another successful Kickstarter. Kickstarter is really hitting at the home runs here with board games, and we have another one for you today. We have with us Artem Safarov. Did I pronounce that right? Maybe I should have checked.
You got that. Okay. You got it. You actually, when we first started talking, you used the shorter term art, which wouldn't be correct. But for the introduction, you got it absolutely right. Okay. Artem Safarov. That's how you do it.
I just realized when we queued this up that it was like, okay, I forgot to ask him how to pronounce his name, but I'm going to go with it. So
doing it live, yeah, as it happens. Love it.
We'll do it live.
It's not the kind of podcast where we can swear, right? Not to set expectations that this is going to be like an expletive-laden kind of a take. No, apologies if anyone was getting excited for that.
Not at all. I think the worst I do is hell. So, but everything else I kind of bleep back just to be on the safe side. But
I was going to say you're so diplomatic describing that as not to stifle anyone's personality. I'm excited for this conversation already. You're a very kind host.
Thank you. But well, first of all, congratulations on a successful Kickstarter. At least at the time that we're recording this, you had a little over 11,000 goal, and you've blasted that out of the water with a little over 250,000. So yeah, this game is going to see the light of day. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled for the fact that that's how the Kickstarter went, and the fact that we funded in I think 1 hour and 16 minutes certainly wasn't something I expected. But wow. This result and the engagement I'm getting from the solo community out there is just mind blowing.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I gotta ask you, how does it feel that especially when you thinking back on when, and we'll get into how you came up with the idea of the game, but you have this dream to create a game, and you're working on it and play testing and tweaking it and stuff like that. And when the rubber hits the road, what does it feel like to have just an overwhelming support and validation that this is a game that you're on the right track, that this is a game that people are going to love?
For the most part, the parallel that I would make is, on a roller coaster when it takes you up like the highest ramp, and that's how the preparation for the Kickstarter felt. And then as soon as I hit launch on it, and we funded in just over an hour, and then got like 4 times the goal in just the first days alone, and just kept blasting through. So the whole time since I hit launch up until and including now has felt like that very steep descent from a roller coaster. Wind blasting in your face, just kind of trying to keep up with everything.
Yeah, you just lift your arms up and go, wee!
Oh, yeah, except I can't lift my arms up because I am typing responses to questions nonstop for the past 2 weeks. But everything but that. The wee is definitely there. And I like that you brought up, the whole validation point, because that I think is still something that I'm fully coming to grips with, because I'm so focused right now on just the logistical sides of the project and making sure that everything runs well and all the questions are answered, that I don't think I fully yet realized just the kind of embracing that the game received. And I will definitely celebrate that once the campaign is over, and let that wash over me.
Yeah, you just gotta kind of stop for a bit, take a step back, and just take it all in and enjoy it. So, but now the Kickstarter is at the time we're recording this, it's still going, and it looks like it's going to end on April 25th.
April 25th. That's right.
Yeah, so you still have a few days left to go check it out if you haven't already. Well, let's just start about with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you got into gaming, and if you had any other games in your back pocket that you've done, tell us a little bit about some of those.
I think my background in gaming started early on with computer games. I've always loved fantasy, so I have a deep love of role-playing games going back to like the mid 90s, and the Baldur's Gate series was something that was like a huge interest and passion of mine. And then once it's interesting actually, because most people discover computer RPGs knowing about the pen and paper kind of D&D. For me, it was vice versa. Like, I discovered all those amazing computer games, and then I realized that, oh my God, you can actually have like complete freedom and just play this with your words. So when I discovered that Dungeons and Dragons was a thing in early 2000s, that was quite a discovery for me. And from that point on, I was playing fantasy role-playing games pretty much nonstop. Now, as more or less adult life took over towards the later 2000s, I did find myself sort of being hard-pressed to find sufficient time and sometimes energy to fully invest myself in full-fledged RPG campaigns as I would normally want to. And at that point, I think it coincided perfectly with the rise, the renaissance of the board gaming, because it provided sometimes similar levels of engagement and challenge and meaningful social interaction with others in a much more compact way, and one that felt more inclusive and welcoming than RPGs, maybe because of the lighter weight and just the variety really of the games that are out there, because there's no way that I am ever going to get my wife to play D&D with me, because she has clearly stated that that's not a thing. But we did play through Pandemic Legacy Season 1 and are midway through Season 2.
Okay.
And despite the fact that that's a fairly complex game, that's something that I can share with her, even though it doesn't sort of put her off because of some perceived nerdy things or whatever. So the shift towards board games was really a welcomed one for me, because it's really broadened the possibilities that I could sort of immerse myself in the stories that I love, both fantasy and other genres. And then at some point, because I've always been, I think, fairly good and passionate about creating things, I tried my hand at making games myself. And I've been doing that for a long time, but in 2015, I thought that I had a fairly good design for a competitive strategy game, and that's how I created and launched a game called Cauldron, a board game of competitive alchemy. So it hit Kickstarter in 2015, and it did reasonably well. We've collected just over 30,000 Canadian from almost 1,000 backers, and have successfully gotten the game into players' hands. Now, that game itself was kind of like a mix of resource collection and use that you can find in Lords of Waterdeep, with a bit of kind of a confrontational take that you would see in games like Munchkin. It was a very playful, kind of funny, screw you kind of design with a healthy dose of strategy thrown in. Okay. Something that I'm very proud of, and you can still learn more about it and buy the game. But as far as the ever evolving game landscape goes, it was a fairly small blip on the radar. However, it did give me a great taste of realizing your dreams and seeing something that only existed in your mind come to life in this box form. And I still have a box of Cauldron in my office. It's a great conversation starter, and I still play it from time to time. But I definitely wanted to keep going at it, and that's where I think I really hit on this idea that, based on my experience with Cauldron, it was always like, I understand how important it is to play test your games thoroughly, and also how difficult it is to get people to play test it unless you're paying someone. But normally, like, you can only get your friends to play it only this many times, and getting strangers to play it, which is even more important because unlike your friends, strangers will actually tell you when something is wrong with your game. Getting strangers in a blind test going is even harder. So I thought that I found like this perfect cheat for the easy play testing, and that is to create a solo-only game. I've recently been much more into solo games, specifically because, especially after the birth of my second child, my social gaming time has dwindled, I think is the right term.
Right. Funny how that happens like that, yeah. So.
Yep. And as I think as the success of Unbroken showed, I'm not alone. For many different reasons, but solo games have definitely taken off. And at first, it was an interesting thing, because when I thought of, maybe I'll do like a solo only game, a game that really doesn't really settle, doesn't have a solo mode. Like the game is solo mode.
Right.
And at first I thought, are people going to think this is stupid and I went over to Facebook, and there is this amazing Facebook group called the Solo Board Gamers.
Oh, yeah.
It is the best group, bar none, that I am a part of. It's just so constructive and friendly and engaging and positive. Love being a part of the group. People who run it do an amazing job. Shout out to Sean and Sydney and the team who does that. And I've seen that there is like the group of 10,000 people who are so excited about playing solo. So that was like a really good vote of confidence for me to say that, I will absolutely make a solo only game, and we'll see how well that goes. And that's how Unbroken was born. It evolved quite a few times, but basically it stayed true to the fact that it's a tale of an adventuring party descending into the dungeon and everything going terribly wrong for them. And I believe in D&D and other RPGs, the technical term for this is a TPK, total party kill, except with a slight exception that one of the adventurers barely survives, and you play as that surviving adventurer, trying to make the best of the terrible circumstances that they find themselves in, just sort of coming to a lost, wounded, robbed of all their possessions in hostile territory, and trying to make it out, trying to recover some of the strength, trying to scavenge together enough supplies to not starve, and to maybe craft some weak weapons, and to start fighting off the monsters who are hunting you all at the same time. And here we are now, at just over 300,000 Canadian in the funding, and still with about half of the campaign left to go. And that's where we get to the roller coaster moment, where I am overwhelmed and so grateful for everyone who has supported the game. I'm just so excited to finish this campaign strong, and very eager to get this game made and into players' hands, to make sure that the excitement that they felt for the way that the project is described carries through to all the excitement that they get from playing this game.
Definitely. Now, because it's a good thing of a solo game that is specifically geared and focused on solo play. I know I think the only other strictly solo game I have on my shelf is Hostage Negotiator. And any other game that I play, if I play solo, I'll just get it's either a game that it was designed first and then a solo variant was devised later, or sort of like in tandem with the overalls of design, or I'll just grab one of my co-op games and play 2 or 3 characters at the same time. So that's sort of like my majority of my versions of solo play, but it's cool that there's definitely a market out there for it, and that this is one more game that is going to be addressing, scratching that itch, so to speak. But
well, I think what we're seeing here is the result of very specialized nature of the market that we're seeing for board games right now. I think due to the sheer amount of games that are being released, it's becoming easier and easier to find a game that is very exactly close to something that you're looking for in a game. So basically there is less and less settling for things, and that's not just a pun on the reduced popularity of Settlers. So I think if someone is looking for a game that they want to play solo, I like that there are more and more options, and Unbroken is one of them, to play solo not as a settling for something, much like you described with either fan-made or initially created. There's I think a vast difference in quality of solo variants that exist for different games, where they range from an afterthought to a very well-developed multi-difficulty level systems like the stuff that makes it into Jamie Stegmaier's game, where they have, I think, a dedicated designer who specifically comes up for solo options for games. Yep. So it's, regardless of that, I do think it's different and exciting to be able to have a game that doesn't settle for the fact that you're playing solo, but rather it celebrates it. The whole game is built around the fact that you are alone. Like, it's not just a byproduct or the fact that you're playing 2 or 3 characters. That is the game. So it really puts you at maximum into the shoes of the protagonist, into the setting that the game describes. And to me, this kind of closeness to the narrative helps immersion and helps you feel the part of the game.
Yes, you started as looks like the lone survivor of a group that have gone into an adventure, and sort of like you're entering the game on the tail end of an adventure where everybody is your whole team is being killed off except for you. I guess the theme is now I only did the print and play aspect of it, but so my understanding is we're entering into the end of an adventure and starting the lone adventure of this lone survivor that has nothing but his bare hands and what remains of his sanity and wits after whatever hellish monsters they've battled up to that point. And
yeah, basically, and the whole game from that point on is just trying to get out of there. The only issue is that because the monsters who have ambushed you and killed your friends are still after you, so you have to go through 4 increasingly difficult monsters to get out of the dungeon. So there will be 4 combat encounters that you have. So the game kind of goes in these like valleys and peaks where you have a bit of time to get yourselves together, make some weapons, maybe learn some skills, and then boom, that's level 1 monster. You fight it, hopefully beat it, and then you have a little bit more time until level 2 monster is upon you. So it kind of gives you a little bit of time to prepare, and when the monster is there, you have to fight the monster, and that's where the weapons that you've crafted for yourself come into use. Another cool thing that I'm very proud of actually is that you don't have actually to fight most monsters. There is always a chance to trick them to avoid the fight altogether. So it kind of gives you multiple ways to deal with any situation that you're presented with. So you can see what would be more beneficial for you in your current predicament with your current set of resources. For example, if you've stumbled upon a huge stash of food early on, maybe you don't want to fight like a giant cave bear, but you would rather like distract it with food and then just sneak past it. And then you don't have to spend effort to stab with a little knife, being all Leonardo DiCaprio fighting with a giant bear, and instead save your strength for later. Sure, it might result in you starving a little bit because you don't have enough food to eat for yourself, but that's these are the kind of decisions that the game forces you to make. What is the best way forward? How do you best use the resources that you have?
Yeah, and that's the cool thing that I like. It's there's mechanisms of of course battle, but also like resource management where you're have to manage what you have, use your time wisely because you only have so many clicks before the monster ambushes you, and then as far as decision making on how you want to craft your weapons and what weapons you want to craft will dictate what tree you go down. So yeah, you could play this numerous times over and over again and just have different scenarios I mean, the cards are, the deck's a set thing, the characters are a set thing, but really, it's how you play and the decisions that you make that really unfold the story as it goes, and each one could be very different from the last.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to hear you talk about it exactly like that, because that is precisely the answer that I would normally give and because many people did ask about their playability factor, especially on Facebook, where people had concerns. There are only 4 characters. Is it going to feel the same after a while? And exactly like you said, just depending on the different sequence of monsters that you're going to face, and there are 6 different monsters per level, the different combinations of them really force you into different tactical puzzles, and the resources that you have at your disposal, which depend on the sequence of encounters that you have, on which you also have a lot of control, gives you different tools to solve those encounters. So it's kind of trying to find the most efficient way through these encounters to arrive at the challenge with the best sort of array of resources at your disposal, and then to use those resources efficiently to overcome the enemy.
Well, let's get into the victory conditions and the mechanism and how the game plays out.
So the win condition is simple. As long as you beat the 4 monsters that after you defeat the 4th and final monster, you have to not starve. And if you survive that, you win. As simple as that. There are 2 ways to lose. Either you are killed by a monster, or you starve. Also pretty easy. Now, the monsters, of course, have a variety of different ways to kill you, so that's exciting. You can lose in a whole bunch of different ways. You can be crushed into a pulp by a troll. You can be poisoned by a wyvern. There's a whole world of terrible possibilities out there for people to experience. And if people do win, there is a bit of a score calculation mechanism just to for people to feel even better about overcoming the dangers of the catacombs, where basically you would count up the amount of resources that you have escaped the dungeon with, and that will determine the score that you obtain.
Yeah.
One interesting thing there is that
I'm sorry, that I think that's one of the things that I was kind of driving for, is like, if you make a game too easy, it's like it's not very rewarding when you win it. It's like, oh well, I won again. But if it's, you don't want to get it too difficult where it's like, it's frustrating, but you went to the difficulty level to a point that when you do win, it's like there's an accomplishment there. It's like, yeah, I beat this thing. Yes, I finally did it.
Totally, and I think my biggest inspiration to get the right tone in this regard is a game called Space Hulk Death Angel. Mm-hmm. It's a Warhammer 40k game published by Fantasy Flight Games. By the way, I'm very sad by the fact that FFG has stopped their collaboration with Games Workshop. I thought that the treatment that FFG gave to Warhammer games was fantastic. Yeah. So in that game, you rarely win. Like, it's a brutal game. I think it's about like 20 to 40% win rate, maybe. But the trick that it really accomplishes is that all losses there feel so epic and badass that it's not about winning. And I think that's what I try to emulate as much as possible with Unbroken, where it's not whether you win or lose that determines your satisfaction with the game. I think I try to make sure that even if the tale that you end up telling is this crushing defeat, but it's still crushing defeat of a person who found themselves in terrible circumstances and gave it their all to try to escape and, went down fighting and swinging, my hope is that it doesn't frustrate for the reason that the stories that emerge from this narrative, even in defeat, are compelling and engaging and get you to sort of cheer for the underdog, even if you know that ultimately they're going to lose. And having said that, I don't think anyone complained about Unbroken being too easy ever. Okay. It's meant to be a tough game. I think the current sort of aggregate win rate in my recorded games hovers around 30%. Okay. So it's an accomplishment to win it, And that's where I'd like to have it. And I understand that some people might be looking for a little bit higher success rate, and for them there is an easy mode in the game that sort of tilts the chances a little bit more into the player's favor. And for all the masochists out there, there is a hard mode, also known as the nightmare mode, that I welcome anyone to try who thinks that the game is too easy for any reason.
Well, tell us how the game plays and how all the different mechanics play with one another.
So the game, unlike many dungeon crawlers, is all about resource management. There is minimal randomization involved, perhaps at most in the sequence in which you encounter different encounter cards, and to a small extent in randomized actions that monsters take against you. But for the most part, you have a bunch of resources at your disposal. Some of them represent physical things like wood or metal or food that you use clearly to either make weapons or feed yourself. And other resources represent your strength, so something that serves as both your measure of hit points and your sort of energy bar for hitting monsters and hurting them, something called effort. So for every one of the 4 levels, you have a certain amount of time, and you use the time performing encounters that basically present different little scenarios that would happen. Like maybe you found a patch of mushrooms. So if you spend some time picking out the non-poisonous ones, you'll be able to have some more food. Or you found like a bunch of greedy goblin children, and you can trade them a trinket for a bunch of information about what's to come. So it's these kinds of encounters that you have, and you are able to exchange some of the resources that you have for other resources, hoping to get more and more sort of beneficial exchanges. Now, after some time has passed, and you always have a measure of control over how long you linger. The longer you spend on any given level, the more resources you collect, but also the more the chance that you are going to be ambushed by the monster, putting yourself at a disadvantage in a fight. But then once the fight happens, unless you were ambushed, you can trick the monster if you don't want to fight. But if you do fight, then your weapon comes into effect, and your weapon basically gives you different abilities to hurt the monster, again, by spending some of the resources that you have and inflicting wounds on the monster. The monster, in turn, performs their own attacks and combat actions that either decrease your life force or rob you of useful resources or weaken you, a fairly standard set of nasty things that monsters do to adventurers. And if you survive that, you need to eat a little bit of food, you get a certain reward, and you repeat the process a few times. Now, different monsters will have different strengths and weaknesses, and different weapons that you have will be more or less effective against monsters with different capacities. So, for example, a mole is a weapon that is fantastic at breaking armor for monsters. But if you happen to fight a monster that doesn't have any armor and is just like huge bag of hit points, like the wyvern, a mole is a pretty subpar weapon to go against it because it's so efficient at breaking armor, but not that efficient at dealing out significant amounts of damage over short term. So you are always working with kind of incomplete information about challenges that await you. Now, there's a trick that you can scout ahead and find out more information about the monster that you're going to fight, but these are the same resources that you would be able to spend fighting that monster. So you're always balancing certainty with the general amount of resources that you have to solve different problems. And that's a very interesting mechanic where sometimes you just want to be extra sure, but the little effort and cunning and time that you just spent scouting out the monsters may be the difference between your survival and your untimely demise. So I like the fact that the game forces the player to make these difficult decisions, often without a single and simple right answer. And in tormenting the players with this lack of certainty, I think that's where the engagement really happens. I don't know if you found this on your playthroughs, But that's what I've been hearing from many of the playtesters, and that's something I'm really happy that came through in the game.
Yeah, it's very much you have to plan ahead, but you have base it on the information you have at the time, and you don't have all the answers or all the information to make a perfect decision, unless you just really you know luck out or plan really well. But yeah, it's that whole aspect of just the uncertainty and the unknown of what may be lurking around the corner. Yeah, I found that very compelling as far as the theme of the game goes. It was very well done.
Have you managed to win a game?
No.
Hang in there. Hang in there. It's possible.
Yeah, still working on that.
Well, one of the things that I actually quite like about the way that Unbroken came out is that it's a game that you get better at. Like the more you play, the more you learn about which strategies are effective, which strategies are versatile enough so that you can adjust them on the fly, and what kind of challenges you could potentially encounter. So what should you be preparing for? And it's actually something that I'm quite happy about, because I like the fact that it's a game that you can learn to be better at. With the so much of this cult of the new that we have in our hobby right now,
Right.
It can be difficult to some extent to play a game sufficient number of times to actually to be able to say, what, this guy is actually really good at that game. Because normally you probably like take out the game out of the shrink and play it once or twice, and then you have to get something else to the table.
Oh yeah,
And the fact that
so true.
Unbroken
so
is
true.
only solo and it's so short that you're likely not going to have trouble playing it multiple times, I think really facilitates that ability to actually get better at it as a game. And I think that's something that people will really enjoy.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, very much so.
It's a managing resources and managing incomplete information to create a strategy that's versatile enough to be prepared for a variety of different eventualities, and not being afraid to lose in order to get better.
Right. Okay. And yeah, I want to point out a few stretch goals that were unlocked that I think really speaks volumes on just how in tune you are with not just solo players, but just players in general. First of all, the dual layered tracker sheets. When I first saw the I guess the some of the print and plays that I've seen online, and then when I played, it's like, well, okay, well, yeah, we have a cat, so
Enough said.
enough said. But the fact that now we have a dual layer tracker sheets, so your tokens and stuff ain't flying all over the place, and also in hand with that is you have an online scoring and tracking tool. Is that like going to be like an app assistant that's going to be done?
Not really. I wouldn't go that far, because I'm a person who doesn't like to have digital enhancements in their games.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm the only person I think who prefers the first edition of Mansions of Madness for that reason. No, it's more just like to have an online program that you would be able to just enter the results of your games in, and then if you're interested to see, what is my overall win percentage, which monsters am I having the hardest time again, this is the kind of program that would allow you to get that kind of stats. And as a stats nerd myself, I find that very exciting. And it also really helps me on the developer side, because collection of aggregate data like this allows me to balance and tweak things to make sure that all the monsters are balanced and the heroes are balanced. To especially if enough people use this tool and enough results are submitted, the amount of data that I get to work to ensure ongoing balance of the game is really priceless. So people get a nice way to keep track of their success. I get a nice tool to make sure that the game remains balanced yet challenging. Everyone wins.
Okay, sweet. Now, how many different languages is this game going to be in?
Well, the physical game is only going to be in English, mostly because, again, the way that they planned this project, perhaps somewhat modestly in the beginning, but it only presumed the physical manufacturing of only the English version. However, with the amazing success that the game had, we've had so many requests for other languages that we have unlocked, French, Spanish, German, and Italian translations. So we're going to be making these available in print and play version, as well as we'll translate the rules into these languages. But having physical games in these languages is still something that is sort of down the road at some point.
Definitely a worldwide endeavor there. So.
Certainly, like the amount of support, and that's one of the things. Like one of the things that I really wanted to make sure was affordable and easy EU friendly shipping, and that's something that I was able to achieve. And all packages headed to European backers will be headed from within the EU, so there is no extra tax, no extra tariffs that people usually have to worry about. And as a result of that, especially the French community has been fantastic in support. And I got to use so much of my kindergarten level French in my brief correspondence with them that, Duolingo is really paying off there for me.
Very good. All right. That's good to hear. Now, not to plop more work into your lab, but do you think this game that you may later down the road release, as far as like expansion things, a new deck of new characters or new monster decks or anything like that?
Yeah, and in fact, Unbroken was always conceptualized as a game that exists to be expanded. So pretty much any aspect of the game, be it heroes, be it monsters, be it encounters, even the set of resources and different weapon development trees that are available, all of that is meant to be expanded. In fact, I already have some very concrete ideas about at least the first upcoming expansion that would introduce about 12 to 16 new monsters and 2 to 4 new characters, and the new weapon upgrade path, and maybe even some rules for use of magic. And the excitement from the community on the project has been amazing for that. I've been getting so much input for how to make the mechanics for magic, and so many ideas for overall just people want more of everything. Okay. So we're basically keeping all of that to the expansion, because I don't want. It's actually one of the interesting things that came out of this project, because my philosophy has always been to put all the content that is in good enough shape to be published from the beginning. So I don't do things like, if we get this much money, I'll unlock this new monster, because to me that begs the question, why wasn't this monster that was ready to go a part of the initial offering? And that kind of approach kind of ruffled some feathers, I think, in the backer community, where people have not been as excited as I would want them to be about some of the stretch goals, and kept asking for more monsters, more heroes. And my question about that is always like, how do you picture this? Like, that I had some ready monsters ready to go, all tested out and good to put in a box, and I just didn't to get more money from you? No, everything I had is right there in the beginning. And when we finish work on a new batch, that'll go into expansion, and then people can be absolutely certain that every single monster, every single character, every single weapon that goes into it has been properly play tested and is not just something that's being whipped up on the spot.
Excellent. Yes, yeah, very much so. That's good. So, all right, Artem, well, thank you so much. This has been fun, taking time out of your busy schedule. And I know once this Kickstarter pledge closes up, that hope you able to at least smell the roses and the revel in your success. That before all the fulfillment and shipping and all the other stuff kicks in. So, but if people want to find out more about you or the game, where could they go?
Well, my website, ultimagames.com, would be a great starting point. Also, just searching for Unbroken on Kickstarter should probably hit you towards the right direction. It's the one that is grossly overfunded, in case you're looking for it. I'm on Twitter as Art Safarov. I like to chat with people. And overall, I'm on Facebook as well. You can see me posting in many different games, different groups, especially the solo gaming group. And I look forward to touching base and chatting with your listeners. And on my end, Thomas, really thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and to talk about Unbroken and my process and the projects, and to hopefully interest some of your viewers in joining the project. And thank you for taking the time to craft the print and play of Unbroken, and to suffer through a couple of defeats on what I am positive is a road to an eventual triumph.
Thank you so much. Yes, and of course we'll have links to all those things in the show notes of this episode. And it's just really cool to when I first started the podcast, I was like, oh, cool, I get to play games. But since then, it's like I've been able to talk to so many cool people and designers and creators, and even other content creators. Just to be able to find out more about the people that's in this fantastic hobby that we all love and enjoy. And actually, speaking of such, if you don't mind, we have a little game we like to play with our guests, just to give us, I guess, a window into their personality, and in case they haven't derived that already. So
awesome. Let's do it. I'm pumped.
All right, it's called the Mega Meeple Rapid Fire Round, and I'll rattle off two things, and you just tell me which one you like better. All right, action or comedy?
Comedy.
D&D or Pathfinder?
Ooh, that's a tough one. D&D 5th edition, because it takes the least amount of technical detail to run. Okay. But definitely Pathfinder over 4th edition of D&D.
All right. So some conditionals there.
I have opinions about these systems. We could spend a long time talking about that.
Okay. Pepsi or Coke?
Coke all the way. People say they're the same, but they're not.
Okay. Scrambled or fried?
Sunny side up.
Okay. James Bond or Jason Bourne?
James Bond, because he was played by Sean Connery.
There we go. It's one of the best ones, I think. All right. Well, Artem, thank you so much again for your time, and congratulations again on a successful game. And I'm looking forward to getting that. If you're one of these listeners that download and listen to episodes right away, you still have some time. You have until Wednesday, April 25th to get over there and back the project and check it out. And even if you're not only just solo gamers, but you just want a game that you don't want to have to try to organize and schedule like a half a dozen so many friends to come over all on at the same time. Hey, pull this thing out and play a solo game of Unbroken, a solo game of survival and revenge, because you got to get revenge on the monsters for killing your entire party. So.
Thanks very much for this conversation, Thomas. Really had a blast.
I had fun too. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned next week as we celebrate our 50th episode 1-year anniversary, and we hope very much that you will join us in our celebration of that. We're going to do like a retrospective look back on how we started and how far we've come. And you may hear some familiar guests make an appearance as well. If you haven't already, go over to iTunes and subscribe. And while you're there, give us a 5-star loving. Leave us a happy review. Really appreciate it. And also, you could follow us on any of our social media outlets. All the links to those are found on the website. And if you really like the show, you go to our new Year 2 Pod Pledge project page and support us there. You could do it by episode or by month or anything like that, but anything that you could do to help us out would be greatly appreciated. It will help us with the hosting cost and such. But even if you can't, don't worry. We're still going to, the podcast and shows always good to be here. As long as I'm here, it's good to be here. And even if you can't support the show financially, you could still support it by just spreading the word to all your gaming friends. Word of mouth really goes a long way, and we appreciate that as well. Next weekend, big weekend, International Tabletop Day, 50th episode, 1 year anniversary. A lot of things going on, and we hope you will join us next weekend and celebrate with us. Until then, this is Tom saying, we'll see you at the gaming table.